Hello and welcome to the NXTPRO show. It's Matt Reynolds hanging out here with you after we have had some big weeks of basketball. It's been a minute. We were on the road in Los Angeles last week, so we're back this week, and we've got a lot to talk about. 4 great guests to go over 5 great events that we had last weekend, and 4 more big events coming up this upcoming weekend, including Pro 16 Session 1 we'll talk about from last week, Pro 16 Session 2 that we'll talk about this week, and so much more. So thanks for joining us. First guest is going to be my man Pablo Kong, who is out in Birmingham. And Pablo, in Birmingham, you had a couple Pro 16U teams that were there, but obviously primarily some of our best NXTPRO teams that were there. We've got to start with Ryland Woods, who was one of the most impressive players, particularly in 17U for the Tennessee Travelers, and just really had a dominant weekend all around.
Yeah, for sure, Matt. He's one of the guys that's kind of like under the radar, about a 6'5" kid. He's a local kid from here, live in Knoxville, so he's a local kid from here. He really, not really getting recruited or whatever, but he's just a player. He just understands how to play the game. He just does everything right on the court, and I think that's what's the most entertaining when you watch him is that the kid can shoot, the kid is athletic, he's gonna play defense, but he's going to pass the ball and get everybody involved. And he's such a good slasher. He just does a lot of positive things on the court, man. He's just a basketball player.
Another player that really fit that bill was with the Bama Celtics. Zamarion Johnson plays for their 17U top squad. Super athletic, but in transition is where he absolutely thrives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the kid is like phenomenal in transition. I think he's probably about 6 foot or so, but I mean, he is an elite athlete. Like, I mean, he had quite a few dunks. I think in the tournament before, I think in Indiana, he actually dunked on somebody. So every tournament stop, he's probably dunking on kids. But I mean, it's just tough to stay in front of him. He's so good with the ball. I mean, really crafty. Really, really tight handle, and he could really jump. And shoot the ball. So good luck staying in front of him.
What would be your most entertaining team that you were able to see in Birmingham from a box office standpoint that you had to see?
So I would say, I mean, it had quite a few good teams, but if I had to pick one, I would say what was most entertaining for me would probably be the Tennessee Travelers 17U team. I mean, that team, they just play some good basketball, man. They really remind me of a team that just, they really move the ball. I mean, they don't just pass the ball, but they have a lot of player and ball movement. Everybody, from 1 to, I think it's 9 players on the team, 1 to 9 can dribble, shoot, and pass, and they really look for each other. It's nothing, you don't have like a singular person on that team that's just gonna just dominate everything. That's why if you look at the box scores and the stats, you see kind of like it's evenly spread out because they all pretty much play the same minutes. Their coach does a phenomenal job with them. And they're just fun to watch, Matt. And they really defend. They really, really, really defend. You know what I mean? You see a team like that, you would think that it's a zone team, but these guys are picking you up 94 feet. They're matching up full court. They're pressing you, run and jump. They're just doing so many different things. And they get so many deflections because of the way they play defense. And so it creates a lot of steals. And, honestly, when you watch them, if you look at some of the box scores, like these guys are scoring like 80, 90 points every single game. So it's like super entertaining to watch.
Kamari Manuel was a player for Cap City Clutch on the 17U side that coming into this event, maybe under the radar and, feel like he really blossomed and has become, I guess you could say, on the radar after this weekend.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a player that should get some good looks. Really, really, he's got a nice size for a point guard, but he's just, his overall pace, his feel, and his just dog mentality on the court really, really, really did some good things for his team. I'm not sure what their record was over the time, but I really enjoyed watching him and just watching him compete every game. Really, really, really phenomenal player, man. He could really get to the rim. He's just a strong kid, man. I think he's about 6'2", 6'3", can shoot the ball. Really, really good defender, individual defender. He can pass the ball, but his thing is really just, turning the corner and getting downhill and making guys better. That's his thing, man. So he's somebody that should definitely be on the radar.
Who are some other guys for you that maybe weren't on your radar going into the weekend, but are now on your radar because of how well they played out in Birmingham?
So I had a few guys So one was Kamari Manuel, the guy that we just mentioned. It was another kid though that plays for the Tennessee Travelers 17U team that nobody pretty much knew about. Big kid, a big 6'8" kid named Sagung Sumta. I think that's how you say his name. But from what I know, he's a local kid here in Tennessee as well, and I didn't know anything about him. But like I said, he's 6'8" kid, really athletic, but could do some things on the wing. You know, he catch the ball face up. He's more of a face up type player instead of like, back to the basket guy. He's more of a catch face up, put the ball on the floor. I've seen a couple crossovers, some spin moves. That's really a kid that's
And
really
6'8", huh?
at 6'8", Matt. So I think that's somebody that you should probably get your eyes on soon. And we can do what we got to do. But the kid is really, really, really a good player, and he's just scratching the surface. Because I know he hasn't been playing basketball that long. That's the most surprising thing about him. But he's really, really, really talented kid, and his ceiling is very, very high.
As we wrap up, the conversation on this Birmingham event, anytime we go to the South, let's just call it what it is. It's a very talented area. There's always going to be deep talent in the South anywhere you go. And so what would be the final bow you'd put on this weekend that you took away from a session where, in session 6, we're starting to get towards the end here. Session 9 is the last time to qualify for the Pro 16 finals. And then obviously we're all teams are going to Orlando at the end of the year and looking, fighting for seeding all throughout the season, but these games all matter. So what's kind of the thing you'll leave with of, and remember just from a broad stroke across the board and all the teams you're able to watch?
So I would say that, a lot of these teams are, it's a lot of talent in this league, in the next pro and everything else, a lot of talent. So, whoever you play, it's not going to be an easy game. I think, the coaching is really, really, really something that, you don't really see at other places. But I think we have really, really, really good coaches and developers in this league. And you can tell just by the way that these kids are playing. It's not just some roll the ball out and everybody's flying up the court. They're actually like playing basketball. We're doing fundamental things out there. So I think the biggest thing is more so just the talent and the depth in the league, top to bottom, is just great.
I would agree with you that it's gotten even better year after year, and this year is by far the best. I think the Pro 16 elevated a little bit, but I also think the next Pro section is elevated as well within the league, and it's going to be really, 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 really hard to get one of those top 16 spots. So stay tuned for those standings. They're coming out here shortly this week. But Pablo, appreciate your time as always. Great coverage on Birmingham, and we'll see you soon on the road.
All right, Matt. Thank you.
That was Pablo. My man does an unbelievable job. He helps so many kids, and really happy to have him, as well as our next guy who is on here with us, which is Damani Ganaway. He was out in Milwaukee, where we had an event that was a solo girls event, and it was very, very talented in Milwaukee. I want to start welcome to the program, Damani. I want to start with the Iowa Battlers 16U team. That is a program that we're starting to notice the Battlers are really, really good, and across, all ages, but particularly that 16U team had a standout, and I'll let you unveil who that was and what she did.
Yeah, the Iowa Battlers 16U, most definitely one of the most impressive teams I've seen this weekend, especially like the Battlers as a whole. Their program has been dominant, especially when I seen them in Rockford. I started noticing these players a little bit, but one player that really stuck out to me on that team was Chloe Moen. She's a 5'9", like forward/center. Like, she's a big player, but she definitely gets down in the paint and she plays with strength, force, size. She can rebound the ball. She can play on the perimeter. I think that's what makes her so versatile and difficult to guard, because on the perimeter, larger guards can't guard her. Taller guards can't stick with her because she could rip through off the drive. She could shoot the ball from deep. I think that was really impressive, because the first game I saw her, she didn't shoot the ball from 3, but then the second game she hit 2 or 3 threes, and I'm like, okay, now it's going to be a problem because she's a two-way scorer. And that was definitely something that really stuck out to me as a player. I think, she would definitely make a huge impact down the line, for that team. And that team as a whole, I think they played well together. And some of their players, as far as like their guards, like Mariah or Kenny was one of their stronger guards who helped them especially during the press, they're 94 feet, creating turnovers, and I think that was something that, really stuck out to me is how hard they play as a team.
One of the best 3-level scorers we saw all weekend long was Kendall Damon. And Kendall Damon was, a player that, as you look at it, she dropped 30 in one game.
Yes.
She had many other games, though, where she was very consistent in that double-digit scoring range. She's definitely somebody that we're going to have to, keep our radar on, as Kendall can absolutely score the basketball.
Yes, most definitely. I actually seen her in that 30-point game. She was on fire. I mean, she probably hit about like 7 or 8 threes that game. She's a very like unconscious shooter. Like when she catches the ball, she does not hesitate to shoot. Like if you give her any room, like she's going to pull the trigger. And I think that makes it difficult to guard somebody like that because you never know, when they're going to shoot the ball. And then in the second half, I remember she scored like 12 straight points, like off the bat, and they were down by almost 20 points, I believe. It was the Iowa Battlers 17U they were playing, and she just scored 12 straight points. She had like 2 or 3 threes from the left wing, and then same spot left wing, shot fake, ripped through drive, got an and one layup. I think she's just like a 3-level scorer on all levels. And I seen her in another game where she scored her team's like first 15 points. Like she's just dominant. Like she's a dominant scorer. Like she is volume, and she shoots the ball, with a lot of confidence. I think that's one thing about her. She is a very confident shooter, and I think that helps her. And she's a leader of her team, and she helps her team, stay together and stay engaged during the game. So most definitely one of the most solid players I've seen over the weekend.
Kentuckiana 16U squad, they were one of the teams that they stood out as you watch. Obviously I'm watching from afar, you see it on video, and you just see the energy they're bringing and the intensity. And they were a team that all weekend long seemed to bring that excitement.
Yes, I've seen them once. I've seen them at the end of the weekend, but when I seen them play, they absolutely, dissembled the team they played. It was, very like intense. I think, the way they play at a high pace, high speed. I mean, they get up the floor in transition. They play in the gaps. They play help defense. They, cause a lot of turnovers. They were just applying a lot of pressure on defense. And Kayla Jones, I believe, and Kaylee McElroy, are 2 of, their most dominant players. I think in the game they combined for 47 points. And Kayla, I think she scored like 20 points in the first half. And Kaylee, she scored 15. So just, the way that they play and how they get after it, especially like, early in the game, like they're ready to go, they're intense. And especially like they could shoot the ball at a high clip. I mean, the way they were shooting the ball is, it's kind of hard to beat that, especially when they're moving the ball. They're playing very unselfish. I think that team was just, probably one, if not the best team I've seen over the weekend, just because how unselfish and how, they play together as a team. I think it's just like something that I think helps, during the game. I mean, as a team, we want to be able to, help each other, make sure we're engaged and things like that. And I think, their coach did a very great job of that as well, give them some credit too, because, these girls, really know how to play together. I think that's really hard on both ends of the floor, like helping each other on defense, kicking out on offense, reversals, things like that.
Well, let's wrap up. Let's wrap up with this. Look, we've got a little bit of time left. I want you to go over anybody that you felt like really was maybe not on your radar this week that you watched and said, wow, they really played well. Who are some other players that we want to make sure and highlight? And obviously I know we'll have a lot more on nextprohoops.com. So any that you miss, all good. I know we're off the top of the head here. Throwing you a question on the fly, but who are some other players that really, as you watched this weekend, said, wow, they've got some game and I didn't know about them going into the weekend?
Madison Finch from Rice Basketball Academy, 17U, was one player who I definitely saw where, she didn't score the ball a lot, but she's definitely a leader, and she showcased, some of her leadership skills on the court by just, making sure, her teammates are involved. Like, she is a very, like, simple player. Like, she doesn't turn the ball over a lot. She pays attention to detail. I think those are things that, you want in a point guard. She could get her teammates open. She could drive, kick, draw double teams, things like that. And, she makes it easier for teams because she plays hard. She cuts to the basket, with purpose. She gets her teammates easy buckets, and she's a really good passer. She has, very, good eye, on the court, very good vision, and I think that's something that, a lot of point guards may not have, in today's game because, they're more dominant on scoring, which is nothing wrong with that. But, some things we don't see like that pass first players, more so I think it's something.
Right. And like you talked about earlier, getting your team involved and, taking your team up, a few levels is very big. So, well, again, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you. Great coverage out in Milwaukee. Again, check out nextprohoops.com. He's got many more things coming out on this Milwaukee event, but we appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. You have a great one, man.
All right. We continue on and we move now to Sean Seiler, who was in Memphis, Tennessee, where we'll be back this week. This past week, though, we had a NXTPRO as well as we had on the girls' side as well. So mix of girls and boys, 2 events in one place. This upcoming week, we've got the Pro16 session that's out there. But let's talk about some players that really impressed. And I think we've got to start with Christian Clare. He had 37, 13, 23, and 32. Unbelievable scoring weekend just from him and what he was able to put together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Christian Clare is every bit of the left-handed James Harden. He's a lefty, plays for SIP United, extremely talented scorer, multiple isolation set calls by the coaches, and he would go get a bucket in mid-range from 3, and then transition. He's getting steals and finishing at the rim. 6-foot guard, left-handed. He plays on the Pro16 with SIP United, will be one of the best scorers you'll see in the 16U division. That's already loaded. Look forward to watching him and his team in Wichita in a couple of weeks. And Christian will definitely be one of the top players in 16U and really, really talented scorer.
Well, we look at, each weekend and each spot, we look for, who's entertaining, who executes well, who really stands out from a team perspective. One of those teams that you really identified was the Tennessee Travelers 14U squad, their middle school squad in particular. Talk to me about what they brought to the table out in Memphis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I pull up, start watching their game, and in the first possession, they got 3 guys on the helpline, and they're one of the most well-coached groups I watched in the 14U division. Colton Lawson and Noah Jenkins are both about standing 6'4". They rebound, they can shoot, and they're both high-level passers. They played really well as a team. They made open threes, and they played some good groups, and they hung up to them pretty well. And it's all in the half court. Defensively, everything's contested. There's box outs everywhere, and then they're going to get that rebound, get in transition, and go score it. And the ideal score for them is get to the paint and pass out for a 3, and they'll get back on defense and guarding the half court again. Really, really impressive group. We'll be one of the top 14U groups that we'll see in Orlando compete for the championship.
24-8 Academy, 16U squad had a good weekend, and in particular, they had one prospect that really stood out above the rest.
Yeah, so a couple of college coaches that were down in Memphis, we're sitting here watching 24-8 Academy, and we're like, who's this kid? And it's Harrington White. And about 1 minute in the game, everyone knew his name. He's standing 6'6", 6'7", has a great frame. One is a selfish rebounder, which I think is one of the most underrated traits. And he's a great three-point shooter. This guy will definitely be he's a 16U, will be at a college Raiders, but his body alone. But then you actually watch his skill and what he can do athletically is going to be a huge shock factor in the next pro.
What was your best game of the weekend? We'll finish with this. Give me a breakdown of your best game, most exciting one you saw.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of exciting games. At one point in the day, we had 5 games in overtime. But that crown goes to We All Can Go versus Above All Sports. It was a back-and-forth game the entire game. Cameron Parker and Derek Miles were literally going back and forth in the late second half and overtime. Really, really good game. We All Can Go avoided the upset here. High-level game. Both teams could shoot, and both teams are really tough. I expect both these groups to compete. One on the Pro 16 and one on the NXTPRO side. Really tough, good shooting teams that are well coached.
Sean, we appreciate you. Thanks so much for your coverage out in Memphis, and we'll see you this week on the road.
Yeah, looking forward to being back to Memphis this week.
Memphis and Memphis. So there we go. And speaking of Memphis, I just want to make sure give a shout out here on the girls' side. Some teams that really stood out: the Alabama Twisters 17U squad, Primetime Family 16U squad, 3 the Hard Way 16U squad, Fireball Basketball Academy 15U squad, Crush Athletics 15U squad. Crush Athletics having a big year with us on the girls' side. Georgia Pearls 14U squad, Unity Basketball 14U squad, and Sunset Park 12U squad. Those were your undefeateds in Memphis. Not a very big list, especially as you go a lot of those ages. You only had one, a couple you had 2, but mainly just had 1 at each age. So great job. You all are really looking good in the standings when it comes to Orlando. As you look at those standings, if you go 4-0 in a week, especially on the girls' side where it's just 3 weekends heading into Orlando, wow. It does put you in a great position to have a very high seed. So congratulations to all those teams, and just a fabulous job of what they were able to do. Before we get to our next guest, we'll take a quick break, and we will be back right after this. We're back after that quick break to talk about yet another event, and that is the Seal Beach Los Angeles event. That was out in California this past weekend, the first Pro 16 session. There's a lot of NXTPRO teams in action against Pro 16 teams. 28 at the 17U level, where we had 28 games where a NXTPRO program played a Pro 16 program. Obviously, a ton of Pro 16s that played Pro 16s as well. And out there with me was Trey Sterner. We've got a lot to talk about. This may be the longest segment we've ever had because there's just so much to talk about. Where do we start? I think we have to start with particularly the teams that went 4-0. And look, we're going to be real on this show. The Twins are really real. We're more, let's say, subtle most of the time, but we're going to be really real. There's some teams, Trey, that flat out shocked me that they went 4-0. I think they shocked themselves in some ways, a few of them at least. And I say that just for our viewers out there, so you know, they said as much afterwards. So we got to start with one family. First off, Lee Loper, coming into the year, all I heard was just a worrisome. He's a program director of one family of just like, oh man, like we aren't good enough. We need this, we need that. Well, hey, whatever he did, it's worked. They're a very defensive group. They play really good defense. At times they do struggle to score the ball. They're going to muddy up the game. But give them credit, Trey. 4-0 weekend. I think you got to start there with the shock of the weekend, them going 4-0.
Yeah, 100%. That team, I don't think anybody expected them to have a 4-0 weekend, but that tradition works out for them. I mean, they're a winning program, and they showed that they can just keep doing that. But they've got some really athletic guys. I like their front court. They've got a lot of length and athleticism there, so they can really shut down, kind of like you said, on the defensive end and disrupt passing lanes and make driving tough for everybody.
No doubt about it. Another team that went 4-0 that I would say wasn't as much of a shock, but let's just call it what it is. It was a shock. They knocked off a big opponent in their first game and just kept it rolling from there, and that was Grand Park Premier, led by Noah Smith. But they've got a lot of talent on this team. Just today I'm looking through Synergy, and you look at their squad, they've got more guys than just Noah. It obviously starts there, in my opinion, when you talk about prospect. He's got the size. He's got, a lot of really good qualities. But I think as you look at their complete team, they were one of the most impressive teams we saw.
Yeah, Grand Park was great. Noah in particular, I thought, had about as good of a weekend as he could have. He's just so skilled with the ball, shot a really good percentage from 3, was efficient with his opportunities. His touch around the rim is excellent. He can handle the ball when you need him to and kind of make plays off the dribble or take the ball himself in transition. I thought he's gotten stronger over last year too, and that showed up on the defensive end and on the boards. So he was great. Another guy that I really like on their team is Baron Walker. He's kind of their anchor at the point guard spot. Super tough, just a gritty point guard, can score from anywhere, takes pride in the defensive end. He really gets stops on the ball, and just a savvy overall player. Knows where to be on both sides, makes plays for his team. And then Landon Gilliott has been making a lot of plays for them through the first 2 weekends. Name keeps coming up from our scouting team. Just really skilled, has some good size on the perimeter, but he's a key for them as well.
No doubt about it. The player that I want to make sure and highlight on their team in particular is a guy that I tweeted about last night, Baron Walker. He's someone that on Synergy is and a great thing that we have Synergy now. We can really break down things a whole different level, particularly in that 1-of-1 game. He went for 21 points and just advanced score, but I think it shows they've got depth on their team where they're going to be, someone that's going to be a force to reckon with. Let's talk about the players that really, stood out and get in more to the player analysis. Quincy Wadley, I think, coming away from this weekend, has a chance to, he's not right now, he's not the current top-ranked player in the league, but I think he's going to have a chance to make a case for that. This was his first time back in quite some time, coming off a knee injury. He's really rehabbed really, really well. He's gotten stronger. He's gotten, frankly, I don't know if he could have gotten more bouncy, but he looks like he is. He's got the complete package, can shoot, can score, can handle the ball, can do all the cool dunks, can do just about everything. He led his team Museum to a 4-0 weekend, and particularly I think he's just scratching the surface as he's still knocking off some of that rust, getting back for his first set of basketball.
Yeah, Quincy, I couldn't have been more impressed with him this weekend. I think he was 1A of my 2 best players from the weekend. Not going to be surprised if he ends up, top 15, I don't want to go too far, but he's that level of player. Just an electric scorer. When he's got the ball in his hands, you can just kind of feel the defense holding their breath. He just puts people on their heels. He's so shifty, such a good athlete at the rim, and then just a knockdown pull-up jump shooter. So no one really had answers for him. They were face guarding him all weekend after the first game, and it just didn't really matter too much. He still got to his spots and got buckets. And I think what I liked best about Quincy was just the way he competed. You could tell, like, he's out there. He wants to win. He's going hard every possession. He played all 4 games, fought through it even after, just being back from rehab. So you could just tell he's ready to make a statement this summer, I think.
Yeah, I think he started his statement this past weekend, and I think there's going to be, even more to come. So very excited about his big summer he's going to have. You said top 15. I'm going to go ahead and stand on it at this point. I think he's without a doubt a 5-star, which means you have to be in the top 15. By the way, hey, Nick Kamania, saw him over the weekend. He was out there. He just got his 5th star today. So that makes 3 5-stars that we had in last year's class: Chris Sanak, Kingston Flemings, and Nicholas Kamania. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool news there. But, you look at Quincy, and I think he's one of those guys that he was there before. So it's not like he wasn't there. But at the same time, when you go through the injuries and the stuff he's gone through the last year and a half, it's not easy. Just mentally, obviously physically, there's a toughness to that side too, but mentally there's a lot of pressure on these high school athletes at such a young age, especially in basketball, because there's one and dones, and you're in the NBA, you're a pro at that point. We're seeing that with Asa Newell, who was in our league the first year of the Pro 16, and now he went to Georgia this year, killed it, and he's literally going to the pros. He's going to be a first-round draft pick in the National Basketball Association. So it goes really, really fast, but I think without a doubt, he's got a great chance to be in that top 10, maybe even in the top 5 in that conversation of the class of 2026 with what we saw. If he can continue to progress and keep knocking off that rust and bringing what he's got a lot to bring to the table. He's got some good teammates too. Ashton Pierce is another prospect that's top 150 prospect that was impressive. Did a good job playing his role. Big shot maker, can do some things. And then Shane Pendergrass, as I look at Shane, Trey, he's one of the more interesting prospects on our circuit because he's what they look like. He's got the prototypical NBA, wing-looking body, 6'8", long, lanky arms, can shoot it, can score it, can kind of do a little bit of everything. And I think, obviously this weekend, a new team for him, just transitioning over there to Museum right before the first session. So there's a lot going on. He's got to get, more adjusted as the time goes along. But I definitely think that trio, along with the other guys they've got on that team, they've got a chance, Museum, to win the whole thing.
Yeah, they were good. I thought that they were probably one of the top 3 teams I saw this weekend in terms of Pro 16 finals contenders. They have the size, they have the athleticism, they have the scoring. Pierce and Wadley can light it up from 3. Pendergrass was a force at the rim. Even, in his first weekend, he showed that he can get to the hoop, draw fouls, finish through contact, really explosive on both ends. And then they've got just pieces all around him. Another big man. But I thought on both ends, they executed well. They played hard, kind of showed that they are in that top tier of Pro 16 teams for sure.
I think the heavy favorite at this point, if there was one, which there's not, a lot of people say going into a season like one family the first year, heavy favorite. Everybody said, yeah, this is the team. Last year, heavy favorite, BTI. They got 2 top 25 guys and a lot of good players on their team around them. This year, there was 5 or 6 that we all sat around and said, all right, maybe you could even make a case for 7 or 8, depending on a few things. After seeing the first week, I think there's 2 teams that are above everyone, but I don't know that it's to the one family level or even last year, the BTI level, where it's like, this is the team. But the 2 teams for me, it's Museum that we just talked about, and the next team is AAO Flight. And AAO Flight is at Aiden Chronister now. This is his 3rd year with us. He's developed in this program. He's a very talented shooter, very talented scorer, high IQ player. He's going to be someone that can help somebody immediately in college. But now you put the talent they put around him. You got Kamarion B. You've got the Placide twins, Gavin and Gallagher. And Gavin in particular is where I want to start. Gavin, to me, was the highest stock riser of the week. Look, you look at what he was able to do of guys that we already knew. That's what I should clarify that. Of guys we already knew. To me, he's the guy that I was just like, wow. I mean, I knew he was good. I knew he was top 50 in some rankings. I think he's got a chance to be in that top 20, top 15 range by the end of this summer if we continue to see what he did. He had a game where he had 25 points and 15 rebounds, and he made it look easy. And they were playing tough competition. AO Flight goes 4-0, and again, all the talent in the world. They've got probably 6-7 Division I guys on that one team, and a very eerie reminder of that BTI squad last year, just in the balance where anybody can go off on any certain game. But a guy like Gavin in particular, what's so impressive, Trey, is he's able to impact the game even if he's not scoring because his defense is incredible. And just like I said about Shane, Gavin is the same way, as is Gallagher. Both of them long, lanky. They've got great NBA frames, as you would say.
Yeah, I think if you look at what schools are looking for in the modern game, those 2 twins, Gavin and Gallagher, are just what you want. They can guard, multiple positions. They can score it from anywhere. I think Gallagher even had a game where he had 4 threes as well. Gavin was at 1.16 points per possession, which, if you're not familiar with that metric, is really, really good. He shot 64.2% true shooting. He was just excellent on the weekend. Their versatility, their size, they're very fluid movers for how big they are and how strong they are. Lets them, get out and do things on the perimeter as well as kind of bang down low. So I think you're going to see them really skyrocket this summer. And Gavin in particular, I think, is easily a top 20 player in this class for me.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where they rise because, again, what we saw this weekend, I felt like they've been at Sunrise Christian for school ball this past year. They didn't have the gaudy, numbers where you're like, oh, wow, look at those numbers. But they developed. And you're seeing that development now get put on this stage with AAO, and they absolutely shine it again. Aiden had a really good weekend scoring it as well, shooting. Kamarion Bede had a good weekend doing, what he's doing, be an aggressive driver. But I think as you look at that team in particular, they've got a lot to be very, very, very excited about. We've got a conversation. Who is the best scorer in the league? Joe Sterling and Caden House are going to go toe for toe on this all year. I'm a firm believer. You look at right now, not all of the stats are in synergy at this point. Caden is going to definitely have him right now in the stats just by a little bit. Joe's averaging 23. All of his are in there, all 4 games. Caden, I think he's got 2 of his 3 games that are in there. He didn't play the 4th. And he's going to be somewhere around 31 points a game, if I had to guess, 32 points a game for the weekend. But these 2 guys, I mean, they just absolutely lit it up in every form or fashion. And obviously they're high volume guys because they need to be to lead their teams, but they take really tough shots at times, but they make really tough shots. And particularly Caden, what we saw this weekend, he's a guy that he can't, Joe and him are similar and they can shoot the ball and they can really fill it up that way. Joe has different ways he definitely gets open. Caden has different ways he gets open. Caden, what I think surprised some people, not me, because we went out and scouted him in the offseason, but he can really dunk the ball too. He can make some highlight plays. You're just like, oh, wow. oh, I didn't expect that all of a sudden. And he's up there, dunking over somebody.
Yeah, 100%. Caden was really impressive this weekend. No one had any chance of stopping him. It seemed like I think he was over 80 points in his first 2 games. You just don't see that very much, but he can really truly get a bucket from anywhere. I know that gets said a lot, but that's true with Caden. I mean, he can score from anywhere, off the dribble, run him off screens, and he even generated a lot of transition looks with his defense. His team really got up and pressed, and he did a good job of getting in passing lanes and getting his hands on balls and getting out for some highlight plays in transition. So I thought he showed a really well-rounded game this weekend. Obviously showed that he's going to be one of those top scorers. But Joe, I mean, when you talk about fundamentals and just a pure scorer, Joe is about as good as it comes. His footwork, his mechanics.
His footwork is phenomenal, Trey. I mean, you go through those clips. I posted it if you want to go look at on my X account, Matt Reynolds, and then 3 underscores after my name. You'll find me. Joe Sterling, there's a clip on. There's every bucket. I think it's like 3 minutes and 50 seconds. I've tightened it down as much as I can for you guys. Go look at it. And if you're a young man, young lady watching this, look at the way he moves and look at his footwork. That's what you want to emulate, because this is a dude that, I mean, Trey, to your point, he gets open where there's no space because of his footwork and his ball handling. And you can tell that the work in the lab that he's doing with Clint Parks and Hot Bread, it works. It works. It shows up. I mean, he takes some unbelievably hard shots, but he makes them at a high rate. 1, because he practices them, but also 2, and a large reason, his footwork, and he's able to square up and shoot the ball and have the right mechanics to be successful.
Yeah, when you talk about just creating space in tight windows, he's one of the best at it. He gets to that mid range, he gets to the baseline. He just needs an inch, and he gets it with those turnarounds, the way he pivots. He's just so good at finding that little bit of daylight to get his shot off. And I don't think he even shot as efficiently as he probably will the rest of the season last weekend. So I would expect to see probably this weekend his numbers go up even a little bit. So I don't know. The sky's the limit for Joe. I think he's a clear high major type player. I think he's going to get his buckets wherever he goes. So I wouldn't overthink that if I were scouting him for the next level.
No, and look, he's done this for 3 years. He started with us at 15 years, 15U. He didn't play 15U. He played 17s. He did it again his 16 year. He played 17s. And this year he's playing 17s for the 3rd straight year in our league. This dude was good the last 2. He's on another level this year. And I think because of that, CPSA's got a really big chance to do some special things. So I talked about Gavin. He was the player for me that I knew going into the weekend that I was the most impressed with that I knew. I also knew a kid named Eli Sank, but I didn't know Eli as well. And as someone on TNT would say, hey, forgive me. I was not familiar with your game completely, because Eli not only played well this week, he went from a guy that, coming into the week, I was like, all right, he's got low to mid-major offers, Division I. That's great. That's awesome. He's going to be a good piece for West Virginia. To leaving the weekend, Eli is a surefire high major player, and he's going to be a top 150 guy. I'm a firm believer he will be in people's top 150 rankings by the time this thing is done. Development has been there with this West Virginia Gold squad, and frankly, just the playmaking he was able to do for his team, working with TJ Crumble, who's very, very talented, and the scoring he was able to do, the defensive stats he has, everything was efficient that Eli brought to the table this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's just the picture of efficiency, the picture of a winner. I think he's coming off a state championship with his high school team, but you can tell he is a coach's son. His dad's a D2 coach, and you can just tell he makes the right play every time. He sees the right read. He makes the right read. He's so good at creating contact offensively, keeping guys on his hip, using his floater, using his touch, or finding that dump off or kick out. He just, people were not able to keep up with him this weekend, and it was really clear. He shot really efficiently from 3. He allowed 0.2 points per possession, which was in the 98th percentile for the weekend. So when you're talking about defenders, maybe one person did it better. So Eli, I think,
two-way guy, a true two-way guy. He's going to be able to give you impact, and again, he's got good size as well. So big time weekend from him, and big time weekend from West Virginia Gold. That, you look at their record, they probably could have won one more game. It happens, but also, I want to give a shout out to TJ Crumble. He averaged 20 points and 9 rebounds on over 50% shooting, 36.5%, if I remember that correctly, from 3-point range. Very, 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 very good numbers. He's someone that's in the top 100. I think he's criminally underrated. I think he's been put in situations where people maybe haven't seen his full tool set used, but he plays extremely hard. And you put up those numbers, production matters. Production matters. I know that it's easy in this game sometimes to be like, well, you look at this long term and this long, like, yes, I know you have to obviously put that in as a college coach and as a rankings evaluator. That's obviously very important. I don't want to say it's not. But TJ has that too, but he's super, super productive. That West Virginia Gold team, they're one of the more surprising teams to me of how well they played. I don't think their record, is indicative of just how well they played, because, again, I think they at least won one more game. But they also had one of the harder schedules going into this weekend. So they're sitting there at 500. We've got so much more we could talk about. I want to talk about Alex Costanza. He's, top-rated player in the composite that we have in our league. And coming into this weekend, we wanted to see him really pop off the page. I felt like he did that, and particularly he did it in primetime fashion on Peacock, had his best game as they defeated a YGC squad that, frankly, I thought they'd be 4-0. I really did. They had an unbelievable weekend. Kevin Jaywalk coached their guys. Cam was playing well. Trey Clark was playing well. Seven Spurlock was playing well. Nas Price was playing well. Like, they had an unbelievable weekend, but Alex Costanza really brought it in that particular game, and his team needed it. They'd have been 1-3 if they lost that game. And if you're 1-3, which we'll go over the standings here in a little bit, 1-3 doesn't mean you're out, but you only got 2 weeks to improve. Those 16 spots are locked in on the Pro 16 level at the end of Wichita. So for the Pro 16 section, that's it. You got Memphis this week and the following week. You got 4 games this week, 5 games in Wichita, and it's just not much if you get behind. So getting to 2-2 was huge for them, but it doesn't happen without a big, big game from Alex in that YGC contest.
Yeah, he really had the moment set up for him. He's going to be on Peacock on national TV. His team desperately needed a win. And he came out and had probably what was the best game that I've seen him have in the last, 2 years, or last year that he's been with us. I thought he did everything you would want from him on offense. He showed, he's got that 6'8" frame. He's strong. He can really get to his spots off the dribble. He has some wiggle. He finished really well around the rim, used his size and his length and his athleticism vertically to create space and get through tough windows, play through contact. He was at the line a ton in that game, which I like to see, knocking down threes, creating in pick and roll. He's a problem on the offensive end. He's just a super tough matchup, and showed it in that last game, especially. I think if he can bring that momentum here to Memphis, they're going to have a big weekend. And someone, that really elevated him around them, I thought, was Paulo Semedo, the big man for them, reclassing to 26. I think he has a chance to be, right in that top 100 conversation, pick up some big stuff over the next couple of weeks. So
He's got a chance to be in the top 50 for saying that, frankly, just as active as he was. He had a big weekend. But yeah, that Scoot squad, though, I'm going to say it. Anybody that's 2-2, we're going to break down the standings here in a little bit. You guys better win this week. You better win, because if you're 2-2 and you drop off a 1-3 or a 2-2 again, I'm not saying you're out, but you're going to put yourself in a position where you got to go 4-1 or 5-0 in Wichita, and that's not exactly easy to do, not in this league. Before we get to the standings, let's talk about the Las Vegas Knicks. They had a great weekend. Most notable win was against High Major in a game that went down to the wire against Caden House on the other side. Lamar has dogs, man. And as somebody said this weekend, and I'm going to steal this saying, this is going to be my new saying, his dogs have teeth. They don't have gums. They got teeth. They got bite. And they really, they're not maybe going to bark the loudest, but they're going to definitely show up in the biggest moments. The Knicks are a squad that I think we have to consider as a contender to win the entire league. No, they may not have the Alex Costanza, the Caden House, the Quincy Wadley, but I think as a whole and a collective unit, you can make an argument that they have potentially the best team from 1 to 9 on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, you always know when you play the Knicks that you're going to be in a fight for two halves, I guess, in our league. You're going to be in a fight. They're going to show up. They're going to play hard. They're going to defend the heck out of the ball, going to put pressure on you, run out in transition. And that lineup has, I think close to five guys that could play at the, low to mid-major level with Gianni Duro, Zion Harris, Caden Goss, Curtis Coleman, and Bryce Iwoha. I think all those guys are low to mid-major level players, and you can see, they've played together for a couple of years. They were contenders last year in the Pro 16 level. I think they'll be right there again. They have chemistry, they have the shooting, they have the defense, and they can really get out and run. So,
and they won the championship at 16U last year. This is the team coming back. They're winners. They've done this before. This is not a new rodeo for them. So, we've got a lot still that, we haven't been able to talk about. Obviously, look, we can't sit here for 2 hours as much as I wish we could. But let's talk about the standings. Let's get to those. And as we get to those, we'll go through and obviously talk through, players on those teams as well. Let's start with the 4-0 teams. We talked about one family already. Again, really good weekend. Lee, I guess you can coach. I guess you can coach a little bit. 3D Empire was another one that they had the easiest Pro 16 schedule coming in this weekend. So it was the easiest schedule, but they still performed at the end of the day. And they're a team led by Trey Nunn that, they've got high hopes. And when you start 4-0, Trey, it doesn't guarantee anything because they've got a harder road the next 2 weeks. But it does put you on a pretty good pace to, anchor that spot in the top 16.
Yeah, Trey Nunn and Mason Thomas were really good for them this weekend. I think that's a strong duo to start things off with. Both big, strong perimeter players. Both guys that I think are Division I level players, and they played well together. They put together a solid weekend.
Keeping with the 4-0 list, we've talked about Grand Park Premier and AO Flight. We have not talked about Rhode Island. Rhode Island Elite. Look, they're they're not as much of a shock as some of these others going 4-0. So it's not a shock that they played hard and were able to win. But some of their wins that they had, who they beat was more impressive than anything. Coming out and beating some really, really talented teams. They had one of the tougher schedules and went 4-0. So it's not like, they had an easier schedule where, look, one family in 3D had, if you look at by the books, they had two of the easiest schedules of any Pro 16 program. So yes, 4-0 is still very impressive. Not trying to take anything away, but we'll see what they do against tougher competition. Whereas this one, Rhode Island Elite, led by Adama, holy cow, they had a weekend. And Adama, goodness gracious, he had a game. I was looking on Synergy. Sure, he had 23 points and 21 rebounds in one game. 23 points and 21 rebounds. Just an absolute dude. He plays so hard. Guys are going to look at him and say, oh, well, man, if he was 7 foot, man, if he was 6'10", look, I don't care how tall he is. If you go watch that production, how hard he plays, he's going to be somebody that is an absolute dog. He's got teeth, he's got bite to his game, and he's got, opportunity to really ascend into the top 150 rankings, I think, nationally over the season, if he keeps playing the way he played, in particular, leading Rhode Island to a big weekend of 4-0.
Yeah, Adama was amazing, I thought. When you watch him play, there's just no one that's going to play harder than him. He is not going to be out-efforted in any games. He's a competitor. And on top of that, he looks like an NFL tight end. He's strong. He's explosive. He's going to finish everything around the rim, and he's going to grab any board that's within 10 feet of him. He's not going to get beat for a loose ball. And what really impressed me was his decision making. I thought from last summer to this summer, he looks so much more comfortable with the ball in his hands, so much more comfortable when he gets double teamed. He even showed some ability to hit some jumpers from mid range and three. So
that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge for his game to translate to college. The bully ball and the intensity, look, those things help no matter what, but you got to be able to shoot to some extent. So I think that was a big thing that we saw this weekend. Team Museum we've talked about. So that's all your 4-0 teams coming out of week 1 in the 17U. In 7th place, the group of 3-1 teams. You've got the Knicks, who we just talked about. The one loss they had, they had it in their grasp. They had an opportunity there and just couldn't pull it out. The most surprising group in this section, Trey, to you is who?
I think when you look at it, Pack is the most surprising to me. They were a team that struggled a little bit in Kansas City when I watched them the first time, but credit to Pack, they've come back and, they've added Marko Pavlovic on the interior. He did big things for him coming over from Sunrise. He's got some skill. He's big body, strong in the paint. And then I think they have a really competitive backcourt with Den Forsyth and Kayvon Bonner. Those two can light it up from three. Kayvon had an outstanding weekend. And he scored, I don't know what the
I watched him in the Scoot game. He scored 28.
Yep.
He scored 28 against Team Scoot. They don't win that game without him. They do not. They're not even close. They came back in that game and won almost basically a near buzzer beater, I guess you could say. They took the lead with a couple seconds left to play. So he had 28, hit a bunch of threes. I think you're right, though. That's a sneaky backcourt. That's not a backcourt where you're going to be like, oh, wow, they've got this 5-star and this 4-star and boom. But I tell you what, they can outplay some 5-stars and 4-stars at times. And I think we saw that particularly this weekend where, look, they went 3-1. I would not have had them going 3-1 into the weekend. So some people on our staff, Liam, didn't have you getting but 3 wins the whole season. That was not me. It wasn't Trey either. It was someone else. So I'll let you figure out who that was. But some motivation there for you, I guess. Keep it on going. But we love seeing it. Love seeing the success. SA Future was the one for me. That's what I would have answered. And here's why. Isaiah Ward out. He's injured. Unfortunate. Donovan Chris, without getting into too much of the particulars of his personal health, he is dealing with a foot injury right now that he's one of the toughest kids that I've seen in 11 years doing this, knowing what he's going through. And he's going to be fine long-term. I just want to make sure that's put out there. He's going to be perfectly healthy. But he's got some things that, frankly, if he had 3 weeks or 4 weeks to rest, would be better. But he doesn't have 3 or 4 weeks, Trey, because they've got to win. This SA Future program last year in the 17U had a tough start to the season because Kingston Flemings was not available to play due to health. And that tough start put them in the play-in game in July. They don't want to repeat that. Going 3-1 this weekend was massive for them, and particularly Donovan Chris was unbelievable shooting the basketball. And again, when he's dealing with the foot element, but he's still playing so hard, he's battling through the pain, and he's still being very effective. That was the part for me that just blew me away, and I just got to give them a lot of credit.
Yep, Donovan, I think is one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in our league. And there's a lot of good shooters, like we talked about, Caden House and Joe Sterling and Aiden Costers in that conversation, but Donovan is right up there with him for me. He's just so smooth with a shot. He sets his feet very well, runs hard off screens. And he also brings a lot to the defensive end for them, I think. He has long arms. He's really good as an off-ball defender, finding ways to disrupt passing lanes. So he's going to be key for them as they kind of maintain that record and look to upkeep their winning ways here.
No doubt. He's going to be very, very key to that. YGC, that's the least surprising. If anything, I was surprised they didn't go 4-0 because they had that opportunity, and I know they want that one back. I'm sure that they would love a rematch at some point with Team Scoot. It was a very great game on Peacock, went down to the wire, both teams kind of going back and forth. SIP United, give them some love. Sam Funches, big-time weekend for him. Sam is a prospect that just went into the top 25 and on threes rankings. I think he'll be back in that mold. He's been as high as in the top 10 at points in his career. He has that upside. He's a 7-footer that can score it, can rebound it, does a little bit of everything. And I think all in all is very exciting to watch. Very, very exciting to watch. So kudos to them for being able to pull that off. Mason Williams is a prospect on that team that I think you should definitely keep an eye on. That's your 3-1 teams. And then we get to the 2-2 teams. And there's a lot that are in 12th place. Again, why is 12th place important? The top 16 make it. So if this was today, we would obviously have a big, big tiebreaker between all these teams. So you have the 12th spot, the 13th spot, the 14th spot, the 15th spot, and the 16th spot. Everybody after that, you got to go to the play-in in July. In Richmond, you're not guaranteed to be in the bracket come Brian. You're going to have to be in the play-in. There's 4 spots, and there's going to be 12 to 16 teams battling it out for those last 4 spots. No one wants to be in that predicament. So if you're in this 12th spot, look, you're in a position where maybe you didn't have your best weekend. You obviously didn't have your worst weekend either. You can't afford to have another bad weekend. And here's the group of teams. 1 of 1. I thought overall their guards had a good weekend. You look at Jeremiah Jackson, you look at LJ. Those two are super, super talented. And Trey, I think in that backcourt, as they go, the team goes. They had some big games. They really had an opportunity to come back in that Grand Park game. Almost did. That would have been big to kind of flip to 3-1. But all in all, it's basketball. It happens. I think they're going to be a team that can, elevate out of this group and get into the top 16 a little bit more securely after Memphis. But they do have a very tough schedule. So their schedule was middle of the pack as far as difficulty this past week. It gets much harder coming into these next 2 weeks for them. So they're going to be one to keep an eye on. BTI United was a little surprised they were in this spot. They went 2-2, had a tough loss to CPSA, who's the next team. Look, CPSA would have been somebody I had in the top 16 heading into the year. And very talented. We talked about Joe Starling earlier, Josh Irving. They've got pieces on their team, but they've got to figure things out. They need to find a way to go 3-1 this weekend in Memphis. Won't be easy, but they need to find a way. BTI United, I want to make sure I give some shout-out credit to Isaiah Slim Rogers. And Trey, let you talk about him because he's someone that, as you look at, the leaderboards across our league, and particularly you look at points per game, he's in the top 10. He averaged 21.3 points per game, very efficiently as well, I might add. It was able to shoot from the floor, well, but from 3 in particular was where he made his mark. And I think that he's someone that, as we see more and more of his game, he's going to be a guy that, needs to continue to elevate for his team to elevate, but it's got a chance to take his team to get into the top 16.
Yeah, he's been one of the more impressive point guards that I've seen this summer in the 17U division. He's so good in pick and roll. He's so good in the mid-range, getting to his spots. He has a really good floater, shoots very well from 3, as you were saying. He has good passing vision, can really control the game on offense for them. You can just, give him the ball and let him go make plays. So I think as you see that team keep gelling, him figure out his teammates, I think that offense is just going to keep going on an upward trend.
Keeping on with the standings here, high major, we've talked about 2-2 Caden House set the last game. So that was a tough loss for them. They really needed that one against 3D Empire. Kentucky Basketball Club is one that I could see it going either way. I could see them making the Pro 16 finals. I could see them missing. They've got a chance, though, definitely to do it. Gabe Weiss is one of their top prospects, but they've got other guys on the team as well that are very talented. Trey, what did you see from the Kentucky squad?
Yeah, I think Jonathan Moss and DeMarcus Surratt will be 2 to watch for them over the next couple of weeks in their backcourt. Jonathan is, maybe a little bit of an undersized guard, but he's a really tough defender, very good playmaker, can really score it. And Surratt is just a high-level scorer. He can get things off the dribble. He's 6'5", a bigger guard, so he plays really well at the 2 spot for them. But that group fights. I have faith in them to have a good weekend here in Memphis. So I think they can go up in those standings if I were to guess.
MPJ Elite is another squad at 2-2. I think they've got a chance to break out of this tie and go up as well. You look at the talent on their roster, it seems like Trey Paulding is starting to figure it out. He's starting to figure out, hey, I'm the guy on this team, and I got to go take us to another level. They obviously have many other prospects on that team as well, but I think they're a team that definitely has that opportunity. Okay, now we get to the part of the list where there's some that I'm like, hey, you went 2-2, and that was a good weekend. Nebraska Supreme, 2-2. They're probably played above their heads. We're able to get a really good weekend for them to go 2-2. They had one of the easier schedules. Now it gets much harder for them the next 2 weeks. So we'll see what they bring. But I was impressed with their team. I think they're better than what I had anticipated. And Trey, a team that, we're going to have to talk about on that bubble watch, which they're going to be on probably all year. They're a team that could steal one of these top 16 spots that maybe you didn't have going into the season, being in the top 16, that out of these top 28 teams, is going to be able to potentially qualify.
100%. I think there's someone that could definitely steal a spot. They're a really well-rounded roster. They've got some really good point guards in the backcourt with Micaiah and Uzziah Sanders. They've got a good front court with Sutton Piatkowski and Derek Tonjes, and Elijah Wilborn now just joined them. Kobe Myers on the wing is a great scorer for them. So they've got the shooting, they've got the transition game. They can defend. They're a little undersized, but they find ways to force turnovers. So you got to show up when you come to play Nebraska Supreme. Definitely not a game you can take off, and they've got guys that'll play at the next level too. So
Definitely do. We've seen them have success. Obviously, Beatty in his first year, he's at Colorado, getting ready to go in to be a junior, which is crazy. Seems like yesterday he was playing high school basketball. But they've always got a guy or two that's going to surprise you. OTP, they're the team that moved up from the Next Pro section. This was their first Pro 16 weekend. I gotta say, you got to be proud as a Next Pro team. If you're watching this, one, you should be rooting on OTP. You want to see them have success. You want to look at them and say, hey, look, yes, we can compete. Look at us. By the way, this weekend, 28 matchups at the 17U level for Next Pro teams against Pro 16. Only one victory the entire weekend. So 1-27. I don't think that means that the Next Pro teams weren't good. I think they were really good. I think it just shows, again, the Pro 16 level has elevated. There's going to definitely be some Next Pro teams that can knock off Pro 16 teams. We know that. But this weekend, it was 1-27. So they showed up really, really well. But in that note, I think OTP, they're a Next Pro squad that has been elevated, and we're able to go 2-2 and really had a chance, Trey, to go even 3-1. One thing I want to shout out is this, and this may be like a weird shout out, but just is what it is. Colin Ross, who is their top prospect, he's in the top 150 rankings, just got moved in there here recently. That's elevated their program. Colin is someone that, he's not afraid of anything. He's long, lanky. He's got a great build, so much upside. He contested more dunks than I think I saw anybody else contest. And sometimes he got dunked on. Noah Smith from Grand Park got him one time. But there was often times where he didn't get dunked on. He blocked the shot or he adjusted the shot. Young fella, keep going up. Keep trying to block shots, because at the end of the day, if you're a shot blocker, whether you're in the NBA like Chet Holmgren or you're in the NBA, you're a Giannis even, like whoever you are, you're going to get dunked on at some point in your career if you're a shot blocker. And that's okay. It's part of life. But you got to keep battling. And frankly, I just wanted to give him some love and OTP some love, because 2-2, probably not exactly what they wanted. I'm sure they wanted 3-1 or 4-0. But I thought all in all, with the adjustment moving up to the Next Pro, from the Next Pro section to the Pro 16 section, I felt like they did pretty well in session one.
Yeah, I think Colin has a great trajectory as a prospect. He moves so well for his size. Like you said, he's an impressive shot blocker, finishes well around the rim, and he even showed towards the end of the weekend some comfortability stepping out and hitting threes. So if he unlocks that part of his game, I think it takes him to a whole nother level. But, he gained that 150 ranking. I think he's squarely there, definitely a top 150 player to me. And they've got some guards on that team that are dogs. Greg Howard, Jay Alexander, Jackson Williams. Those are three, I think, Division I level guards, and they're going to get after you defensively. Jackson Williams in particular was super impressive on the offensive end. He's a great passer and a multi-level scorer. Gets the ball to Colin in good spots. So he's one to watch. He just picked up a couple offers over the last couple weeks too. So Jackson Williams, I think, could have a big weekend here in Memphis.
We've talked about West Virginia Gold already. They're in this 2-2 category. Select basketball is someone we haven't talked about a lot. Most surprised, one, to not see Clint coaching. That was a little weird. So Clint, we miss you, buddy. But on top of that, I was really surprised they went 2-2. They did some very unselect things. If you've come to follow our league the last couple of years, Select is that team that, you come out, you maybe underestimate them. They're well coached and they just find a way to win games. They lost 2 games that typically most Select teams wouldn't have lost. So I'm calling you guys out this week. You're my call out. Hey, you got a lot to live up to. Your program doesn't do what you guys did this past week often. You guys win games more often than you shouldn't win on paper. And I felt like they lost 2 games this weekend that on paper they should have won.
Yeah, I think I trust Andy Harrington to get him right this week. I know he was already eager to get to the film room.
There's a lot of heat. That's what I'll say around the league offices. There's a lot of heat. League insiders are saying, Andy and his squad got a lot of heat on him. But I think you're right. Look, he's a state championship coach. Knows what he's doing. He can really coach. But I will say, that was a little bit of a surprise. So that was my call out of the week. The last two, look, they're the most surprising on this list to be 2-2. TME, who's arguably one of the most talented teams in the entire circuit. Tony Bryant only played 2 games this past weekend. They missed him. Big time. So there's someone that just collectively, I think they've still got a chance to win this entire thing, Trey. This entire thing. And we've never said that about a team that goes 2-2 in the open weekend, but they've got a chance to win the entire thing. It wouldn't even shock me if they went undefeated the rest of the season. Now, I don't think that'll happen. I think that the league is too talented this year where there's just not going to be someone that is that dominant. But I do expect that we're going to see in Memphis a better showing. Hurley, Tony, obviously at the top, very, very talented. But they've got Caleb Sanders, they've got Alex, they've got a lot of guys on that team that are super talented. Across the board, they're going to have 6, 7, 8 Division I players in that squad, and I think we'll see, hopefully a little bit of pickup from them this weekend in Memphis.
Yeah, I think towards the end of the weekend, Caleb Sanders really got it rolling. I think he's the key to that team, their X factor on both sides of the ball. He's a really good player. Looked great. But yeah, like you said, they're still finding their chemistry. Not having Tony for 2 games hurt them for sure. So they're going to have to find a way to stay healthy and get all their guys in so they can compete in Memphis this weekend.
Last but not least in this 2-2 list is in 12th. Tied for 12th is Team Scoot. And I feel like, if you really knew their weekend, they had a really close game against Pac. They had sealed up. They should have won the game. They should have been 3-1. Now they didn't, if and buts, don't win your games at the end of the day. But I do think this is a team that I'm not worried about one bit. Same thing with TME. I think TME is going to get it together. I also think Team Scoot's going to get it together. I expect a big weekend from them in Memphis and in Wichita. And I would be shell-shocked if they missed the top 16 and had to go into the play-in.
Yeah, I think this team goes as Alex and Paulo go. They set the tone for them. So I think they're going to have to come out and have big weekends and bring intensity on both sides. And I think if they do that, they can easily go 4-0.
All right, now the not so fun part of the conversation on the standings. Last few teams here that obviously didn't have the weekend they envisioned: Halliburton, BTI Nation, Coos Elite, Louisiana Elite, Southern Ties. I think Southern Ties is probably the most surprising of that group, just a step up in competition. And this isn't 16U anymore. It's 17U basketball. So they've got to bring it, but they have the talent on that roster to be able to compete for one of those top 16 spots. So I would expect their staff. Drew does a great job coaching those guys. Jaden Hopkins, talented player. I think he got challenged this week, and I think he'll take those challenges and step it up to a whole different level this following week. But obviously, all 5 of those teams, look, they're not in a great spot. They've got to have a good weekend this week in Memphis and a good weekend in Wichita to be able to get back up into the conversation for those Pro 16 finals, top 16 spots guaranteed. So, look, that's the standings. It's a lot. And again, I'm sure we still miss something because that's how it goes. There's a lot of talent in the league to talk about. Be on the lookout for a ton of stuff on the Pro 16 page, both at Instagram, on X, as well as right here on Twitter, or YouTube, I should say. YouTube is going to be a platform that we use a lot more this week for games. So check that out. We obviously also have the 2 Peacock games this week. They are on Saturday night in prime time spot. And we are going to have some stellar matchups. So, Trey, appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on and bringing in all the insights today.
Yes, sir. We'll see you in Memphis.
Well, before we close out the show, I thought it was important to note this. We had a really tragic incident happen this week, unfortunately, to one of our programs. And we just want to send our thoughts and prayers and our love out to Oklahoma Chaos. Just it's a heartbreaking moment, and one that no one could ever be ready for. So we love you guys. Please be safe out on the roads and traveling, and it's just one of those things. Don't take life for granted, and we're with you guys. And anything we can do here, we're going to be wearing some special pins this week to honor the Oklahoma Chaos family, and we just want you all to know we're thinking about you, we care about you. And we'll take this moment of silence here at the end for the lives that were lost and memory, and be back next week.